A man is driving his car along a desert road when the car suddenly stops for no apparent reason. The man has the hood up and is looking at the engine when he hears a voice behind him say, "It's your carburetor. If you clean it, the car will start." He looks around, but there is not a soul in sight in either direction. Then, he notices a white horse with its head over the pasture fence next to the road. The horse looks at him and again says, "It's your carburetor. If you clean it, the car will start." The man does as he is told. He removes the carburetor and knocks it against his foot. Sure enough, a little dirt rolls out and falls into the middle of the road. He gets back into the car, and it starts immediately. He rolls down the window and says to the horse, "Thank you." "Oh, you're very welcome," replies the horse. The man keeps driving until he reaches the first bar he can find. He gets out, goes into the bar, and starts downing drinks one after the other. Overcome with curiosity, the bartender finally comes over and asks the man if anything is wrong. "Yeah, but you'd never believe me if I told you," replies the man. "Try me," says the bartender. "Well, my car stopped on down the road. I had the hood up and I was trying to figure out what was wrong, when suddenly I heard this voice behind me telling me that the carburetor was dirty. I looked up and down the road, but there was no one in sight. Then I noticed a white horse with his head over the fence. It turned out that the horse was actually doing the speaking. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen." "Well, you got lucky," says the bartender. "Lucky? I met a talking white horse and you say I got lucky?" asks the man. "Yeah, you got lucky you met the white horse," answers the bartender. "There's also a black horse in that pasture, and he doesn't know a damn thing about cars." An angry woman bursts into the pet store and demands her money back. "You sold me a frog and said it would satisfy my sexual desires." The salesman, trying to calm her down. "Don't worry so much, madam. Did you do what I told you to do?" "Yes, I did everything you said. Undressed, lay on my back, put that thing between my legs, and it did nothing," the woman replied. Strange. It's a perfectly trained frog. I don't understand why it didn't do its duty. Tell you what, let's go to the back room. Let's do one experiment," suggested the man. Takes the frog and leads the woman into the back room. He asks the woman to undress and lie on the bed, take off her underwear, and puts the frog on the table, looks at it, and says to her, "Well, look carefully and memorize. I'm showing you one last time." A businessman comes to church for confession. The priest asks him, "What is your sin, my son?" "Father, you see, I'm too greedy." "Greed is a great sin. When you leave the church, you must give $50 to the first person who comes your way," says the priest. "How? $50 to the first person you see?" The man was indignant. "Yes, my son. If you want to get on the path of correction, that's where you must start," replied the father. The businessman obeyed. He walks out of the church and there's no one around. He walks further and sees a girl standing alone. Heels, short skirt, red lipstick, seductive forms. He walks up to her, gives her a $50 bill and says, "Here, miss, take this." "No, that's not enough. I need $100, replies the girl. "Why $100? Father told me to give $50, says the man. "Well, the priest is a regular customer," replies the girl. An elderly couple had dinner at another couple's house. After dinner, the wives went into the kitchen to clean up, while the two elderly gentlemen went into the living room to talk. One of them said, "You know, last night we went to a new restaurant and it was really good. I'd recommend it highly." His friend said, "Oh really, what's the name of it?" The old man thought for a moment, scratched his head and said, "What's the name of that pretty flower? It's usually red, smells really good and has thorns." His friend said, "You mean the rose?" The old man nodded and said, "Yeah, that's it." He then turned toward the kitchen and shouted, "Rose, what's the name of that restaurant we went to last night?" One Sunday morning, a mother walks into her son's bedroom and says, "Hey, you better get up. You've got to have breakfast and get ready to go to church." The son replies, "Mom, I don't think so." A few minutes later, the mother comes back, finds the son still in bed and says, "Son, I'll tell you again. Get out of that bed, get yourself cleaned up, have breakfast. You've got to go to church." The son replies, "Give me one reason why I should go to church this morning." The mother replies, "Well, for starters, you're the preacher over there." A Mormon was seated next to an Irishman on a flight from London to the U.S. After the plane was airborne, drink orders were taken. The Irishman asked for a whiskey, which was promptly brought and placed before him. The flight attendant then asked the Mormon if he would like a drink. He replied in disgust, "I'd rather be savagely raped by a dozen whores than let liquor touch my lips." The Irishman then handed his drink back to the attendant and said, "Me too. I didn't know we had a choice." A politician visits a primary school to speak to the children. During class, he asks the students if anyone can give him an example of a tragedy. Kevin raises his hand first and offers, "If my best friend is playing in the street and a car comes by and kills him, that would be a tragedy." "No," the politician says. "That would be an accident." Next, Marcy raises her hand. "If a school bus carrying 50 children drove off a cliff, killing everyone inside, that would be a tragedy." "I'm afraid not," explains the politician. "That is what we would call a great loss." The room is silent. None of the other children dare volunteer. "What?" asks the politician. "Isn't there anyone here who can give me an example of a tragedy?" Finally, little Johnny raises his hand. "If an airplane carrying a politician was blown up by a bomb, that would be a tragedy." "Marvelous," the politician beams. "And can you tell me why that would be a tragedy?" "Well," says Johnny, "because it wouldn't be an accident, and it certainly would be no great loss." When NASA was preparing for the Apollo project, some of the training of the astronauts took place on a Navajo reservation. One day, a Navajo elder and his son were herding sheep and came across the space crew. The old man, who spoke only Navajo, asked a question that his son translated. "What are these guys in the big suits doing?" A member of the crew said they were practicing for their trip to the moon. The old man got all excited and asked if he could send a message to the moon with the astronauts. Recognizing a promotional opportunity, the NASA folks found a tape recorder. After the old man recorded his message, they asked his son to translate it. He refused. The NASA PR people brought the tape to the reservation, where the rest of the tribe listened and laughed, but refused to translate the elder's message. Finally, the NASA crew called in an official government translator. His translation of the old man's message was, "Watch out for these guys. They have come to steal your land." A woman has twins and gives them up for adoption. One of them goes to a family in Egypt and is named Amal. The other goes to a family in Spain. They name him Juan. Years later, Juan sends a picture of himself to his birth mother. Upon receiving the picture, she tells her husband that she wishes she also had a picture of Amal. He responds, "They're twins. If you've seen Juan, you've seen Amal."